Godfather. Pulled up to the scene in a 65 Bentley, dripped in Brioni, China doll with me, looking like a supermodel. Oh, what a feeling. 25 years old, 25 million. Today's the audition for the Godfather part. My life's already a movie, so when do I start? I walk up in Patsy's East 119th Street. Fat Tony Salerno gets a kiss on the cheek. I know my way around, not my first time here. Been doing overnight cigarette loans for 10 years. I say hello to Danny Pagano and Tough Tony. Nicky Domino gives me a nod, they all know me. They ask why I'm there so early, I say the part. They say what part? I say the movie, why not? I don't look like Carlo, they all begin laughing. 3 p.m. ready for the lights, cameras, action. Gianni, get in your zone.
Speak softly loud and hold me warm against your heart. I hear your words, the tender trembling moment starts. We're in a world our very own, sharing a love that only few have ever known.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for another Hollywood Godfather podcast. We have so many great things to talk about, so many accolades that we're being a part of and major shows, and we can't wait to tell you about it. And I want to introduce our lady first because I'm a gentleman. My grandmother taught me right. How are you, my darling?
Hi, hello everybody. So happy to be with you guys. It is my highlight. I know I say it every time, but I'm thrilled to be spending time with you.
Well, we likewise. And obviously our friend and compadre, my co-writer and good friend, Patrick Picciarelli.
Good evening, everybody.
So talk about what we're doing. We have all of us have so many things.
All right. Well, we have a very interesting show tonight about the most famous guy in Vegas you never heard of, but we'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah.
We have to make a few announcements. First, we've been getting a lot of emails about the book, The Sixth Family. Where is it? Good question. We have addressed this before, but for those of you who just joined in and don't know what's going on, at the request of a potential, let's call him business partner, we have pulled the book temporarily because we're working on a big deal. This has been going on. In fact, we're almost into it about 2 months already, and the book will be back, but it's got to stay out of the reach of customers now until we do what we have to do. I realize that's a little cryptic. In fact, I don't understand what I just said, but
well, let me give them the street talk. A major publishing company that does genre like we do gave us an offer we can't refuse, and we're negotiating that offer.
but we have to wait. So
that's what I'm saying.
That said, the audio book is still available. So if that's the route you want to go, the audio book is still on Amazon and available for purchase. Okay, now, John, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I wanted to express our thanks, all of us, because we just got a Christmas present from Patrick Bet-David, his new book, and he wants us to read it, and he wants to come back on the show. And he was so generous to us when we first started, as you know, Pat, with the book. I mean, it was amazing. And for you who don't know Patrick Bet-David, you should listen to his show daily. I mean, his following is amazing. He's a business brain, but this is his new Choose Your Enemies Wisely, which I've been doing that for years. And they still show up. I can't get rid of these enemies. But anyway.
Well, the more famous you get, you have to have your share of enemies. We all do.
That's right.
But anyway, Patrick.
At least you're being thought of, right?
Patrick Bet-David gave this show a nice kickstart.
Oh, yeah.
When we started the podcast almost 5 years ago.
And the book. It really sold.
And the book. Absolutely the book. Yes. The first book, Hollywood Godfather.
So we thank you, Patrick. And we'll definitely read the book, and we'll make arrangements for you to be back with us, fortunately.
Yeah. When does that book drop, or has it already dropped?
It's dropped. But I thought it was very nice that he sent me a signed copy, and
Yeah.
That's a good friend.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll get,
I know he kicked you guys off, but he really was one of my favorite episodes that you had. You know, he got such great energy, and he had to bring, you know, his taste to interviewing and being with you guys. And I thought he did a great job of giving you guys a push start. And I think he's great. I look forward to meeting him and having him back on the show, because I think he brings a lot of energy to the room.
Everything.
he does. Okay, then. Anything else for new business, or shall we begin?
Well, let's talk about. I want to talk about the show today, and then we'll add to it something. We'll do that in the show then. Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about a person by the name of AJ Pratt, who was a big deal in a lot of circles, and which we'll get into. This is going to be a two-part show. AJ Pratt, to summarize his life, started out at very humble origins. He grew up dirt poor in Arkansas, and made his way through Vegas. He had a particular skill. We'll get into that in a minute. He wound up being also one of the biggest drug dealers in Vegas and elsewhere. And I don't mean big locally. I mean big nationally. He was huge. We once talked about this. It's my theory, for what it's worth, that everybody has a talent. And I'm not talking about this guy's drug dealing experience. I'm talking about a viable talent that I think everybody has, but you just have to discover it. Like with you, Gianni, it's acting, and you're a hell of an entrepreneur. With me, it was writing. Jeannie, we don't know you well enough yet, but perhaps you can add to that.
She's keeping all those virtues to herself.
Oh, all right. Yeah, well, we'll talk about
in Utah.
We'll
That's
talk
right.
about that some other time. But tonight is AJ. Anyway, AJ Pratt's talent was tailoring. And that's not, we're talking about altering clothes. He created clothes. He created fashion. And he discovered this talent when he was 8 years old. He just decided that he liked clothes, and he gathered scraps and started sewing shirts for himself.
Well, I'm doing, as you know, we're doing a 4-part. I'm part of a 4-part documentary on AMC, and we were filming today all day, actually. And it's interesting what you're saying, and I really got into his head and the people and the publisher. He's coming on the show. He was so enamored to meet me today of the book. We've been trying to get in touch with him. I thought he was in the witness protection program because we couldn't get his phone number, and he's written 40 books.
Oh, are you talking about the writer or the publisher?
The writer.
Oh, you found him.
Yeah, I found him. I met him today. He was on the set.
Oh,
But,
wow.
he gave it a different twist, which while we're in the beginning of the kid, AJ as a boy, 8 years old, he found his grandmother's sewing machine, and he had no toys. And he started a natural, like we all have a natural art within us, or a trait, or a craft. And he discovered he liked clothes at 8 years old. He started making shirts out of flour bags. And that's what he was wearing around the house. But
It was incredible for a young kid. He said he watched it. Was it his mom and his grandma?
his grandmother
Yeah.
gave him more lessons than anything. And that's what he just, but that's how he started his career when you think about it.
And these were well-tailored shirts. This wasn't a flour sack that he made a hole in and put it over his head.
Yeah.
These were well-tailored shirts with sleeves and collars and everything else at 8 years old. And that was amazing. And you have to consider also the area and the times he lived in. If you're an 8-year-old boy who decides that fashion is going to be his future, that didn't sit very well with his family. They thought he was gay, which he wasn't, as you'll see as we get on with the.
He had 7 wives, just so you
He was
know.
the opposite of gay, if there's such a thing. But he started doing that, and he knew he couldn't stay in a small town in Arkansas for the rest of his life. So he decided to take off when he was young. I think he was 16. and he basically hit the road. Now, here's something else that was curious. His life, Johnny, parallels yours so closely. And when his life starts out, he was on the road hitchhiking, and he met his mentor, like you met yours, Frank Costello, selling pens when you were 13 years old on the street. He was hitchhiking, and he was somewhere in Arizona when this car pulls over and picks him up, and it was John Huston who was going out to Hollywood. He was John Huston was in his time. He's long passed away, but he made some of the most iconic movies in Hollywood. And I believe his last one was Chinatown, which is one of my favorites. I must have seen it 30 times.
Right.
I mean, he was an Academy Award-winning producer, director, writer. He won Academy Award. This guy won it all. And he picks up this kid on the road with his thumb out. Now, what are the odds of that happening to him and you at approximately the same age meeting Frank Costello?
Right.
Costello helped you, and Huston helped him. He winds up getting, it was a fairly long ride from Arizona to Los Angeles, and that they got to know each other. And at the beginning, AJ is saying, well, maybe this guy's some kind of a pedophile. Why is he helping me like this? But he wasn't. He just wanted to help him out. And he said, look.
I got to know John Huston, and his daughter Angelica and all that. And like you say, his accolades, his last big movie was Chinatown. But even prior to that was The Misfits.
Yeah.
That was a major, major movie. But we'll get into that part of it. Let's go through chronologically. But just to show you the magnitude of who John Huston was, I think if I got in that car too, I would think he's a pedophile. What's he doing?
Yeah, and AJ didn't know who this guy was. He introduced himself. Hi, my name is John Huston. We're going to Hollywood, and I work in the movies. And AJ wasn't impressed. He just said some guy works in the movies.
Okay.
What did he know? But anyway, during the trip, they had to spend a couple of nights in hotels before they got to where they were going. But he said, "Look, would you be interested in a job?" So AJ said, "Well, yeah," and he hooks him up literally with a wealthy married woman, very wealthy, lived in a big mansion, the whole thing, and she took him under her wing. She was married to a guy that was rarely home. He was gay, and he would spend most of his time with his male friends somewhere, but he would stop by occasionally. But this woman, who obviously was a lot older, taught AJ how to comport himself in society, how to speak well, how to serve meals and drinks, how to, he learned everything from her that he didn't learn in Arkansas, which is basically nothing.
Right.
They also wound up having a sexual relationship.
Which was even more interesting because she was into S&M.
She was into everything, this woman. And we'll get into where we got a lot of this information from shortly, but she paid him $500 a month. And back then, this was in the late 50s. This was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But after they started having a more intimate relationship, she buys him a brand new Corvette. And so he was tooling around with that. And she didn't care if he had his own girlfriends or whatever. But when she wanted him in the house to meet her needs and to help her with parties, and that's what he would do. So he wanted to leave to get married at one point. Now, he was there for quite a few years. He's about 20, right, Gianni? 21, something like that.
Yep. Yes.
And he wants to get married. And this woman said, "How can I talk you out of this?" And he said, "Well, you really can't. I'm in love. And, and said, I really want to do this." She offered him $1 million cash not to get married. And she says, "I don't care what you do when you're here. You have your free run, you have your girlfriend, do anything you want, but I'll have you here. If you're married, obviously you're moving out." And he went back to his fiance and he told her, and he said, "I turned it down." And he did.
No, he didn't at first. When he got home, he was in big trouble. So then he came back. because he had told her okay, and then he got home and the
Yeah,
fiance
he thought
that
about it
was
the second
very
time
upset.
around. Yeah.
So he had to go back and he said when he walked in, she knew and said, "You can't do this, right?" And I thought, that's a lot of money, especially back then. I'm sure he was kind of thinking, all right, we can work this out for just a little while.
Hello.
Yeah. But
What kind of trouble did he get in?
well, the wife flipped out on him and said, "How dare you?" You know, she was shocked that he.
Oh yeah, right.
So he had to go back and say, "Okay, sorry, I'm not going to be able to do your deal," and which I could see how you'd be torn. You're like, "Well, you're not going anywhere. We can have everything. It's just." And she
$1
offered him
million,
a couple
like
of
we're saying.
years.
I mean, you could think about $1 million today. It's a great offer. Hello.
Right,
You
but
know,
yeah, back then,
I would think that if he was older and knew a little bit more about life, he would have taken the $1 million.
take the money.
Yeah, hello.
He was young and in love,
Hello.
Right.
and he wanted to get married. If this would have happened to him when he was in his 30s,
Right.
experience, maybe he wouldn't have done that. And I would think probably not. I know I wouldn't have. I would have taken the money.
Of course. Please.
You know,
Well,
hang around 6 months and then split. You know, have some kind of a plan. His plan was to get married. So, Jeannie, you want to take it from here?
Well, he married this gal. Her name was Linda Lou, and they were so in love and had this happy little life. They ended up having a baby, and things were great. You know, he was happy with his decision, and I think he was that when he went to be an insurance agent for a while. All the while, everywhere he would go, he would have a shirt on, and everybody was so impressed with everything he wore all the time. So he must have had some pretty fancy stuff that he made
Was making
and wore around.
Yeah, and that's how he started. I mean,
Yeah.
I got to know AJ, which we'll get into the story how I met him, but he could sell anything. So I could explain. I mean, I could understand that he went to insurance or anything because he was a people person.
Salesman.
And
Yeah.
and I loved him, but he always wore these exaggerated clothes, and which you walked in the room, you didn't know whether this guy was a rock star, and you didn't know why you didn't know him, but he was somebody.
Well, and once again, that parallels to your life, not the way you dressed, I mean, but your personality, and you're able to mingle, make friends, make contacts. This guy literally came from zero, as you did, and he just had that magnetism about him. But anyway, Jeannie, go on.
Well, I thought of that too as I was listening to the book. I thought the one thing that goes through my head every time I listen to something, I listen to you, and even when we had Mitchum on the show, and I'm thinking, as young men, you guys were scrappy, you were hardworking, you were out. I mean, you guys were fighting to survive,
That's exactly. I was just going to say that. It was, for me, and knowing AJ's, it was all about survival and trying to improve ourselves. And we didn't have the tools or the wherewithal or the people who were interested in improving us. So when you find a person like she was, Costello with me, fortunately, was a straight guy. There was no S&M or anything, but it was, it's, you try to take advice from when you need it. And
exactly. Yeah, I just found it so impressive because I look again, I'll reference it again, but I look at some of these kids today and I'm thinking they wouldn't last a minute. We hurt their feelings and they need to go pet a puppy for a while, but you guys.
I never heard that expression before, but okay.
Well, I know when they said that when Trump was elected, they brought some puppies up to the college so kids could soothe themselves after it. And I thought that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I think the sad thing about now, not to get too far off, is that kids think they should never have their feelings hurt or never be uncomfortable. And this guy was sitting out in the rain, he said he was sitting there praying, oh, I've made a mistake. Look at me. I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere soaking wet when Houston pulled up. And I think, how lucky that, I don't know, whatever the higher power is, stuck someone right in their path that led them to some, just like with you, Gianni, some incredible, kind of like a fairy godmother, but a fairy godfather. I don't know, but somebody that taught you a lot of great things. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
do believe they could have come along, and if you weren't who you were, and AJ, they wouldn't have made it for who you are. It just happened to be a perfect pair of meeting
So
up.
at this point, AJ has a wife and a kid, and he's struggling. So what happens then?
Well, he was, I believe that was the insurance company that he was working with.
Right.
And was that right?
Yeah.
And one of his co-workers had come by and had something wrong with his car. So AJ said, here, you swap with my wife for the day because she's going to drop the baby off somewhere, and you take her car. So he did. And he said, as my wife pulled away, I told her, stay off of the freeway. Don't drive on the freeway. I don't know if it was an alignment problem or something, but then he went to work and got a phone call, and his wife had been in an accident, and he rushed to the hospital. And as he's trying to find his wife and son, he hears a doctor and a nurse in a hallway saying the little boy had passed away.
Yeah.
But his wife was there. And what did he say? It was the day before 9/11. Is that right? No. Sorry, the day before John F. Kennedy was shot.
Right, yeah.
Because they asked, do you know where you were?
November 21st. No.
Yes, he said, yes, I do. I was picking out a casket for my baby, and I could care less what was going on. But that's how I remember what, that day was. It was the day before my life took a turn.
So as often happens when a child dies, a marriage breaks up. That isn't uncommon.
Right.
Which is what happened to him. And he was alone. Well, he had a baby.
No, the baby passed away, and then the wife, he said he scraped her, they had another baby, and she was coming out the door and scraped her arm on the door, and then got feeling kind of sick, and she ended up having a staph infection, and she ended up dying.
I know.
So
to me, that was like, I thought that was, at that point, you would have to think maybe they're taking literary licensing here. And how do you get the staph from a scratch on the elbow from a screen door?
Well, screens are made out of metal rusts. That's how you get blood poisoning. But what are the odds of this happening?
That's what I'm saying.
A little scratch.
Two tragedies so fast like that.
Yeah. So anyway, this Linda Lou was the love of his life, even up to for many, many years. I don't want to give the rest of the story away, but a couple of days later, she starts getting a pain in her arm. Fast forward maybe a week or so, she didn't last very long.
No.
And she got tetanus, and she died.
Yeah.
So he loses his son and he loses his wife. Yeah. And he was.
And let's emphasize the fact that he was just trying to help this guy. Lend his wife's car to him, and this guy.
That's exactly right. He just said, and the thing about that impressed upon me the most throughout this book was, for the rest of his life, he talked so often about, he always felt like it was always like he was talking to her, or thinking, boy, would she think this of me, or would she think that? But he really struggled and had such a hard time. At that point, they had 2 children.
Yeah.
And so
he winds up, he couldn't handle the kids, so he winds up giving the kids to his parents. No, his wife's parents, wasn't it?
No, it was his parents, because he offered to go
and stay with him. And
I don't want to steal your show, but or your thing, but he got the offer to go to Las Vegas to work. And the mother said, I do not want my grandkids being raised in a place called Sin City. So please leave them here with me.
Well, I tell you, this is a good place to take a break, and we'll come back and we'll be in Las Vegas.
Woohoo!
Whoa. Well, we have to make some money. As I say every week, we know where you are. We'll come and get you. Don't go anywhere.
I'm now known as the Hollywood Godfather, and this is my story.
I'm happy to say Hollywood Godfather Robography is now playing on most platforms. Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music. Listen to Joel Ortiz, famous rapper, and Arsenic the Heatbreaker, multi-platinum producer for Sony, produced this record. I'm proud of it. There's 12 tracks. You got to listen to this.
You never know who you're lying in a room with. So I broke a broomstick in half and let it groove with the concrete in the bathroom floor. It had a new tip, stashed it behind the toilet in case I ever had to use it.
We are back with this unbelievable story, and we're just starting. Should we tell them that it's a book? Somebody mentioned the book.
Yeah, that's what
the title.
This book, the research was easy on this because after Gianni told me about this 4-part special, and just to regress a little, to get a 4-part special, a 4-part documentary, you got to fill that up. I mean, it's 4 hours of life story, and this guy, nobody ever heard of this guy,
and they still haven't, which is interesting to me.
I know.
I was on the set today shooting the first hour episode of this AMC documentary, and I'm still wondering. I talked to the people today. I said, "How did you get this on?" And they said, "Well, we wanted to do a feature. They wouldn't let us. They said, let's try this first." So that's what this documentary is now, to let the world get involved, buy the book, and then understand before they put millions and millions of dollars into this movie. But everybody is caught up with the story. It's such a
so we're obviously the first kids on the block to help this documentary along.
Exactly.
The book is called The Tailor, and I tell you, it was a gripping book. I mean, and it reminded me a lot of our book, Gianni.
Well, and I heard that again. I hate to keep saying the same thing, but all day long, the producers of the show and all that, they said, now, when your name came up in the pictures of AJ and I in the 70s and all that, they went and bought my book. And they kept referencing back and forth. They called the writer of this book, his book, and said, did you know Johnny Russo? He said, no.
And that was surprising too, because the name of the book is called, as I said, The Tailor. It's available on Amazon. And a couple of things surprised me with this book. Aside from the fact that it was well written, which is what I expected, because the author, his name is Manna, Manna. I forgot his first name. Do you remember his first name, Johnny?
Steve or something like what I asked.
Anyway, you just go to Amazon and put in the Tailor by AJ Pratt, and the book will come up. But it was very well written, and this book is a self-published book. And the author, this Mr. Manor, because we don't know his first name, he's written quite a few books. I mean, and I'm just very surprised that he went to self-publishing route. Usually that happens when publishers turn it down, and I can't see any publishers turning the story down. Yeah. I mean, it was just that good. Anyway, I get the book, I download the book as an ebook, and I'm reading it. And in any memoir, you'll always have in the middle of the book, you'll have pictures of the person who the book is about and people that he makes reference to in the book. And I just opened it up, and what's the first picture I see? AJ with Gianni Russo. Because he made your clothes or something.
Yeah, he made a lot of clothes for me prior to The Godfather. Now this is all before The Godfather.
Yeah, and
I don't want to spin forward, but we had mutual friends in Kansas City, and they said, "Well, we got a friend in Vegas. You should meet him." And that's when I was just very flamboyant and had my townhouse and in my 20s and driving Ferraris and Bentleys because I was making a lot of money.
So how did you meet him?
But well, I'm telling you, the Savella, the crime family out of Kansas City, the Savellas, told me about him, that he's going to come. And, they told me nothing else about him, but he's a tailor, and and any help you can give him would be doing him a favor would be doing us a favor. And I knew, Nick Savella and Corky and them, and they ran, and I knew them. I met them while I was on my tour promoting JFK for presidency in '59 before he got the nomination in July of '60 to become the Democratic presidential.
And AJ wasn't doing anything other, for the Savellas, for example, or the other mobsters that he was making clothes for. That's all he was doing, was making clothes. He wasn't involved in any kind of criminality. But these Nick Sabella particularly was a big fan of AJ Pratt, and he loved his clothes. He started to put the word out. AJ opens up a business in Vegas called AJ's Hong Kong Tailor, and people are wondering why. Back in the day, in fact, when I was in Vietnam, when we went on R&R, wherever you went, you go to Hong Kong, Thailand, wherever you went, there was always a tailor there that had Hong Kong in the name, because the Hong Kong tailors had
it was good marketing, yeah, because
they had very good marketing, and they had a reputation of making good men's clothing for a good price. He decided
that was the idea.
Yeah, he decided to name his business AJ's Hong Kong Tailors, and he became successful, right, Gianni, in Vegas?
Oh my God, huge. Well, I introduced him to Dr. Elias Ghanem, a lot of legitimate people. I mean, they were legitimate in their own way, but if you did the history answer, Dr. Feelgood was his name. That's a little clue. And it wasn't soon after that he met Elvis, started making clothes for Elvis. He started making clothes for every major star. And when you think about,
we've all seen Elvis in these flamboyant jumpsuits with the sequins sewn. That was AJ Pratt. That was his clothes. And Elvis loved the clothes. So there's something that I learned. I mean, what do I know about tailoring? But to make a suit of clothes for the average man, it takes about 2.5 yards of material, anywhere from say 2.5 to 4.5, depending on your size.
Right.
Elvis was that size at the beginning, and AJ made his clothes throughout his career in Vegas. And toward the end of Elvis's life, he put on a couple of pounds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, to put this in perspective, AJ needed 9.5 yards of material to make Elvis's jumpsuits at the end, from 2.5 yards when they began. Now it's 9.5 yards to fit him. Yeah. And it's something I didn't know. Elvis at his heaviest was 325 pounds.
Right, no, it's crazy.
I didn't realize he was that big.
Oh, he was huge. We used to at ringside. You knew it when we were at every show. I went to Elvis's every show. I mean, Kurt Cobain was a good friend of mine. When he opened the International Hotel, he had Streisand for 2 weeks, and she blew it out. And then they had Elvis for 2 weeks, and that's doing 2 shows a night, 7 nights a week. So that's what he did in 2 weeks. They did 20
weight rather than lose weight.
That's right. And another thing Kurt did, most of the showrooms never sat more than 400 or 500 people. That was big. Like the Copa Room where Sinatra and Sammy and all them, that's had the most was 325. Mm. That's what they were used to. This showroom was 1,500 people with a balcony, and they filled it.
Yeah, they said they were bringing extra tables in and had them right up next to the stage.
Oh yeah, no, I mean when they first did it, they spread everything out, gave more room, but they never thought they'd sell it out, and they did. I mean, and Elvis was bigger than life at that time. My God, it was amazing.
Well, Elvis got acquainted with AJ because AJ was making scarves at the time, in addition to his clothes, but. Elvis didn't start with AJ making his jumpsuits and everything. Elvis wanted his scarves, and he would buy huge quantities to give away, 50, 75, 100 scarves. There came a point where AJ couldn't manipulate his sewing machine anymore. His hands were swollen just making these scarves. And
you know how that happened, though? I was sitting across the table from AJ. How that happened, he was sweating so much, and he was used to ladies giving them their scarf. So AJ handed them one of his scarves, and was so soft because AJ had all these wonderful scarves. And what you're talking about, then he gave Elvis the idea of putting your monogram on them and give them out. That's how that all started. That was AJ.
So he would throw them out to the audience?
He embroidered those by hand, and he said it took just as much time to tape up his bloody fingers as it did to do the sewing. And Elvis had asked for 500, But by then he said, all I ended up giving him, I think the number was 257 of them, hand
He had to
embroidered
stop because the
because his
material was
hands
so
were so
soft.
bloody. And
You
he said
couldn't
his
do a
hands
machine.
never,
You had to hand write them.
right. He said his hands never fully recovered from that it was so
for the
intricate.
rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
but-
what a big deal because all those women were clamoring for those for sure.
Well, it became a
He would
big
throw them out to the
business,
audience,
Elvis.
right, Johnny?
Yeah, what's that?
He would throw the scarves out to the audience.
Oh yeah, no, that became a big calling card. These women would go crazy.
Well,
And,
they said the first thing was a woman had handed him a napkin from the international thing, and then was like,
like sandpaper.
Give that back. And then another lady handed him the scarf. Maybe later that night, and it just blew out like crazy. And then you never saw him without him, and people were crazy for him.
So I would think that.
Let me just interject one thing that because I think we touched on it light enough. AJ, as you said, was sitting in the audience, and we went backstage, and he did a sketch on the back of the menu of Elvis in a jumpsuit with a cape.
That's right.
And that's how he changed Elvis's look. Elvis never wore. He wore tuxedos with glitter and all that on it. But AJ created Elvis, and what became his trademark were those jumpsuits with capes. But that was exactly. AJ.
In the book, it shows an invoice of him that he had sent the bill to what's Vernon Presley. Good Lord. Right. And it shows the bill, which back then, I just had it pulled up. It was amazing that even on this invoice, it said 7 scarves. So that's what he started out with, but boy, it got bigger. But these jumpsuits, one was $2,300, one was $2,050, and it just went on and on, as the bigger he got. But those were prices in 1973. So $2,300 for one of those. I mean, I'd be interested to see if one went up for auction, how much those go for now, because
they've been sold for over $1 million.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
But they were all sequins and they were all hand sewn. That's one thing. AJ was meticulous about doing what he was doing. And again, bringing up his background in design and all that was from Arkansas and his grandmother's sewing machine. It's crazy.
Something I thought was so cool that he did, he said, his signature mark was the 4 buttons on the sleeve and all the different things. He used up every piece of material that you possibly could. You could just see as a young kid, he knew the value of the money, and how to make all that stuff stretch. But his style was all his own. And the 4 buttons on the sleeve, I thought, boy, it's funny now that you look back, and I looked through some of the pictures and thought, boy, he had some snazzy clothes,
Oh my God, yeah. It was cool. We didn't mention the guy is 6'4" we're talking about.
Oh, wow. He must have
looked
looked big in that Corvette.
Didn't you know that? He was 6'4".
Yeah.
Wow.
And a mop of hair made him look like he was 7 foot. I mean, it was crazy.
There's those of our listeners who are interested, there's a video clip of AJ. It goes for about 3 or 4 minutes. He's sitting in a room by himself talking to somebody who's questioning him. And that's the only video clip I believe that exists, because it took me a while to find it, but it's out there. If you want to see, this was at the end of his life, and he was still flamboyant. The hair, and he had this hairline mustache, and he liked to shock with his clothes.
Yeah.
Except when it didn't call for it, like with the wise guys, for example, weren't going to wear sequin suits, obviously.
No, but see, he was smart enough to do that too and adjust. But what's fresh in my mind is that the wise guys, he had to learn how to even the protocol with them as far as respect, because he did a set of suits for a father and son. And he made the mistake of delivering the son's suits before the father.
Oh, yeah.
And when he came to the father just said, throw them over there. And he was a very sensitive guy, AJ, but he didn't know protocol with the mob. The father gets the clothes before the son. I mean, little things like this. I mean,
Yeah, no, yeah, you have to know what you're doing. But anyway, he was so popular and everybody loved him. But that didn't last very long. But his family, long about the time he started dressing Elvis and some other celebrities, he started to get a name, and the family, who basically shunned him, now embraced him because now he's famous. He's making a lot of money, and I don't think he, reading between the lines there, I don't think he was too happy with that. You should.
Well, again, that's another comparison that we made today.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the same thing that happened with my family.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come and visit me, and later on I got famous. Now they all want to come and visit me. I said, no, you ain't going to use me. Where were you when I needed you?
Exactly.
Right.
But,
Well,
like him, though, both of us wouldn't have been where we are if we had our family support and not the support of the people like he had John Hughes and I had Frank Costello. That was our life changers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's as I was reading this, and a lot of things that we have in your book, I can't say that they're repeated in his, but it's from a different perspective.
Right.
And all your stories, not that you needed vindication, but they're all there. And Jeannie, who else was mentioned in the book as far as celebrities go? Do you recall?
Well, Marilyn Monroe was in this book. Clark
There you
Gable
go.
was in this book.
Well, we're missing, but I don't know if we want to get into that yet, because when he started doing wardrobe, he did the wardrobe for the Misfits.
Yeah.
You know how hard that is, and that was Edith Head's job. Edith Head at that time was the biggest haberdasher and costume designer in the world.
Yeah, she won Academy Awards for her design.
Yeah,
she was.
John Huston got her to bring him on as an assistant, and he had to make everything close. He had to bring everything down. They were not wearing sequins. It was a crazy thing.
He was so talented that he thought of things that I don't know about everybody else, but just the way he said where he got these clothes. He said, I went to a thrift store and bought Levi's and did this. And I mean, obviously I've never been in the movies. I don't know how they go about that, but just he used such his imagination to bring everything together. And I really enjoyed listening to this young guy who learned these things as a kid, how to make this stuff work. And he used it throughout his life. He was so brilliant. And I know even with the mob guys and with Elvis, they'd say, he was saying the way he cut the fabric and he made the suits, he'd make the arm where the arms were a little higher to make the men look a little taller. And
the arms. Yeah.
No, he had all the right things. It was crazy.
Yeah, one of his regrets was that he never got the name recognition for his designs that other people did. Ralph Lauren. There's a whole bunch of people that were named in the book. Because he didn't travel in the right circles. He was in Vegas.
Yeah, and that was the thing.
Yeah, you had to be in on the East Coast basically if you were in fashion design. But he was a little bitter about that. But I mean, he got over it. But he was doing extremely well.
Well, the big mistake that the mob did, the Midwest guys, they invested in him and opened maybe 30 stores. They wanted to make his name big, like you just pointed out, Ralph Lauren or somebody like that.
Yeah.
But the problem they didn't realize, without AJ sewing it and out AJ selling it, it wasn't interesting. He wasn't a rack clothes guy. He was so personal, and that's how he got there. They couldn't clone him, and then they got mad at him because they put all this money in, and they said, "Well, you're not in the shop here. You're not. How could he be all these places?"
Yeah, being 30 places at once.
Yeah.
So let's back up just a little bit. the uncle. It was it Linda Lou's uncle,
Yeah, Uncle Howard.
Hardin?
Yeah.
Uncle, was it Harry Hardin? Elvis seemed to know him. He was around from somewhere. Do you know who that was, Gianni?
Yeah, he was a comedian, opening act for people in Vegas. That's how.
Okay. Howard Hardin.
Howard, yeah.
Howard.
Yeah. No, he was a B class, opening act, and they used to say that he warms up the audience, and that's how he got to know so many people, because a lot of people knew him, and that's
Right.
So that's and it was
Well-
Linda Lou's uncle, actually.
Right.
Talking about Uncle Howard, at this point in AJ's life, he was doing very well. And if he would have stayed doing what he was doing, the next phase of his life wouldn't have been that. In fact, it wouldn't have been the next phase of his life. He would have stayed tailoring clothes and designing clothes. But Uncle Howard sort of introduced him to the drug world. And AJ was great at what he did with clothes, and he was also great at what he did with cocaine. And we're going to get into that in part 2.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
And thank you all. We're gonna. Well, we're ending the show, actually, but with a hook that you have to come back. You will not believe where this is going. We're going to very heavily involved with another guy that I had parallels with, Pablo Escobar. The names that are going to be in this and the women that are involved are very well known also, because I had something to do with Marilyn. To find out he had something to do with Marilyn, it was like insane. That's why this book, as we say, it's called The Tailor. It's a black and white cover. Taylor's written on it, and Pat caught on to it. I didn't even notice it until he brought it to my attention. There was a line of Coke at the end of the T.
Yeah. At the end of the T, there's a rail of Coke that goes down to the end of the very well designed cover, I thought.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
Absolutely. That's hilarious.
Okay.
But yeah, I hope everyone comes back, because man, what a great book. And Sal Manna, was that the last
Sal
name?
Manna, that's
Yeah,
him.
Name was
that's it.
Sal.
Yeah.
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 So everybody go
Thank you,
out and get
Jen.
this book. If I know I keep telling so much of it, but it was fantastic and has such great stories. So buy the
All right.
book, come back next week.
Until next week, be careful and God bless.
And now the end is near. It's time to face the final curtain. My friends, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, to which I am certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway, but more, much more than this, I did it my